Madam Clerk, do you want to take the roll? Yeah, I see where it is. Okay.
Yes, I will take the roll. On my clock, we have 1 more minute. Let me queue up the recording.
We do, you're right. I was just asking a clarifying question.
You got it. I see all of our council members are now getting promoted. Councilmember Marshall, can you hear us? Okay.
Now I see Stacy Valenzuela. She's not promoted, right?
Let's check. That could have been in the hullabaloo. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Okay.
All right. So, are you running?
Almost.
Kenmore City Council is now in session. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Mayor Baker.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Garpick.
Here.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Here.
Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
Councilmember O'Kane.
Here.
Councilmember File.
Here.
Councilmember Kugler.
Here.
All present.
All right, we are going to adjourn into executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection B. And then we're going to enter a closed session to consider real estate acquisition. We expect the executive session to last 1 hour, so we will reconvene back here at 6 o'clock. Thank you all. See you there.
And for those of us that are still here, all of our guests, I just want to reiterate that the council has now entered a closed executive session for the purpose of discussing or considering real estate acquisition. They believe it'll last approximately an hour, and we hope to reconvene at 6 p.m. Thank you. Welcome back, Mayor.
Hi there.
Hello.
Oh. City Attorney, are you lurking in the shadows? Shall I just close the executive session or shall I keep it open?
I don't understand the question.
So we're going to come out of executive session. I'm going to close it and go into the regular meeting.
Oh, that's okay. Sure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome back, council members.
Thank you. Can you still hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Great.
We're good?
I can hear you. Thank you. Welcome back, Councilmember Marshall.
All right, Madam Clerk, can you make sure the sound is going to be on and up and running just before 6 o'clock so we can start it promptly on 6?
What do you mean by the sound?
Well, are we still recording?
Correct.
Great. All right, Kenmore City Council's back in session. We are coming out of executive session. And the next item, number 3, is on the agenda related to the executive session. And if those of you who have agendas, if you take a look, item number 6, A is the exact same thing. So we're going to jump right to 6A. Let's see who from the staff is going to address this.
Your Honor, I can give a brief intro.
Great.
I can't see everybody for some reason, but I just want to make sure Richard, Sawyer, Jennifer Gordon, Don Rayton, and Kinnan Williams are here.
I see Jennifer Gordon, I see Richard Sawyer, and I see Kennan just came on.
Okay, great.
I'm also here, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, yes, our watchful attorney.
Okay, so you have a proposed action in front of you, which is to authorize the city manager to purchase the property at 6450 Northeast 202nd Street for the price.
Actually, there's 2 actions in front of us, but yes.
That's correct. I was about to talk about 2 actions, yes. So the first action would be to purchase the property at 6450 Northeast 202nd Street for the price of $3.2 million, plus applicable closing costs per conditions set forth in the purchase and sale agreement dated June 18th, 2021. Also, the other action would be to authorize the city manager to purchase the properties at 6506 and 6520 Northeast 202nd Street for the price of $2.5 million combined, plus applicable closing costs and relocation assistance payments to tenants per condition set forth in the purchase and sale agreement dated June 7th, 2021. As you know, we have been in search of a permanent site for the public works shop for several years now. Last year, you kind of sent us back to the drawing board, so to speak, and we worked on some new site selection criteria and a site selection process. We've been going through that process and involving the public, including having open houses and other ways of getting public input. And at our last city council meeting, we gave you an update on the process and the site selection, including possible sites through phase 4 of the process. In the meantime, we were able to find some willing sellers for properties that were on the site selection list, and we're able to get control of those properties, so to speak, so that we could assess them and simultaneously continue with the site selection process. So it's looking like the properties are looking pretty good and meeting the criteria. The appraisal came in at the prices that we're offering. And there are some other questions you had, and I'd like to turn it over to Richard Sawyer to address those questions.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, so in July 26th, when we presented to council, there were a couple follow-up questions, and Jennifer and I would like to respond to those now. The first was when for phase 4, we reached out and to find any willing sellers. And we did receive, in addition to the property that we're looking to acquire, we received a response from 2 additional sellers representing 4 other sites. And council asked if we could try again to reach out and find all of the applicable property owners for those sites. So I did, so that comprised 3 additional property owners, and I did make an attempt to reach out to those 3. One still unresponsive, and the other 2 have responded that they were not interested in selling those properties at this time. And then I can turn it over to Jennifer for the other question.
Yeah, one of the other questions was in regards to Public Works accident data. And so we requested that accident data from King County Sheriff's Office. And what we found was they have only started tracking government vehicles accidents, specifically government vehicles, which actually incorporates all government vehicles. So post office, the state, county, any kind of government vehicles. So they started that process in 2010, and the data for going back to 2010 there's no public works trucks or equipment accidents in that history. And I am unaware of any others that are, between incorporation and 2010. So.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing no other, oh yes, Councilmember Marshall.
I just assuming we didn't hear back from the school district yet, or they're still out of session, so they don't have a formal position on this. Is that right? Still the case?
I talked to the superintendent. She told me that she did notify her board several weeks ago when I first told her about this. And so they're aware of it. And her position is that they're not taking a position on it at this time.
All right. Is there any other questions? Hearing no further questions, the chair will entertain two motions. First motion to authorize the city manager to purchase the property at 6450 Northeast 202nd Street for the price of $3,200,000 plus applicable closing costs per condition set forth in the purchase and sale agreement dated June 18th, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to state that we all know that this process of locating a public works site has been difficult. And I don't think any site in the city is necessarily perfect. But what I do know is that this site is, it's on a main road. It's directly adjacent to public, semi-public zone already. So it won't be all by itself. The zoning makes sense. It's on a main road. The price is right. And I believe, or at least if I have any say in it, the city is going to do a really great job at screening and it being respectful to the neighborhood.
Hear any other questions? There's a motion in front of us. There's no further questions. Will the clerk please take the roll? Up, Councilmember Marshall.
Hang on, I just wanted to make sure the deputy mayor hadn't glitched out.
This is the best solution we have right now. So that's why I'll be voting in favor.
All right.
And
There are
can I
no-
ask, did the deputy mayor know that he glitched out for a moment? So, yeah, okay.
So if there are no further questions, will the clerk please take the roll?
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
All right. The chair will now entertain a motion to authorize the city manager to purchase the properties 6506 and 6520 Northeast 202nd Street for the price of $2,500,000 plus applicable closing costs and relocation assistance payments to the tenants per condition set forth in the purchase and sale agreement dated June 7th, 2021. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
All in favor, the motion passes unanimously.
All right. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Councilmember File wants item number C pulled. So the chair will entertain a motion to approve of the consent agenda minus item C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the consent agenda minus item C signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Consent agenda stands approved. Item C, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Your Honor. So this is kind of more of like a housekeeping action that we're asking you to take. At the beginning of the pandemic, we issued a number of emergency orders or emergency proclamations, and some of them have either become obsolete or preempted by the state. So for example, we suspended the city's plastic bag policy, but then later it was the state's the state ban that preempted anything that we can do there. So we were just getting that off the books. And then also the moratorium on commercial tenant evictions that expired when the governor's ban on commercial evictions expired, and we're just getting that off the books. And then last but not least is the directive for face coverings or masks. We did that early on in the pandemic. I guess we did it in May, and back then the data and the research was becoming quite clear that masks were a good thing. And yet we were not seeing the state or the county or neighboring jurisdictions issuing any directives for masks. And we said, well, we're not going to wait. We're going to issue our own directive if nobody else is going to. And then right about the same time we did our directive, the county did theirs. And now we're just trying to follow the state and the county guidance on face coverings. And so we thought it'd be best just to get our face covering directive off the books and just follow the state and county guidance instead, now that everybody's on board and knows the value of masks. So, but I think our city attorney has a little change that I think would be good to make to the motion when it comes to masks. And I think it may also address Councilmember Files' concern. City Attorney Don Rayton, can you speak to that, please?
I can. I don't have it in front of me to share. City Manager, do you have the proposed language?
Yeah.
By way of introduction, so what you have before you for the proposed resolution, specifically if you go to section 4, it talks about repealing the City Council's ratification of that earlier Kenmore Mass Directive. And the reason you would repeal it is, of course, not because you don't agree with it anymore, but because it's outdated. It's been over a year, well over a year, and as the city manager has identified, things have changed quite a bit. And in fact, the mass directives from the King County Local Health Officer changed since we wrote these materials. They updated it again as of last week to recommend that all persons wear masks inside, even if you are vaccinated, which is a slightly different nuance from the May 2021 directive. So the recommendation is that there's language amending section 4 so that you will then encourage Kenmore residents and visitors to comply with the local health officer mass directives as may be amended. And that's kind of the critical safety language. So you don't have to keep revisiting this. It's just you encourage it And if it gets updated, so does your resolution. So that's really the comments on that. Happy to answer any questions.
And can I my share screen?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Any questions? Hearing none. Councilmember Fowle, does that answer your questions?
Thank you. Yes, it does. And I want to thank our city attorney, Don Rayton, for forming this language. It fits the need and brings us current. Thank you.
All right, so the chair would entertain a motion to approve item C.
With the language as added by the attorney.
As modified by the city attorney, yes.
That's
So
all.
moved. Seconded.
All right, moved and seconded to approve item C as modified by the city attorney. If there's no further questions, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
The item C stands approved unanimously. All right, so the next upcoming meetings are September 13th, 20th, and 27th. And because this is a special meeting, we're all adjourned, folks.
Mr. Mayor, we have something on the staff agenda.
Wait.
Staff report.
Oh, yes, we do have a staff report. Sorry about that. Staff report, Mr. City Attorney. Mr. City Manager. But our city engineer is going to do it, Mr. Vincente.
I was waiting for you to get it. Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm just here to give you a quick update on some of the traffic safety measures that we've been looking into for our fair city. A couple of things that we've been looking at. Starting last spring, we started evaluating all of our arterials in terms of speed. And this is all of our roads that are 30 miles per hour and greater. The study we're doing right now actually does not include 522, but we're probably going to look at that once we're finished looking at our roads. We have to coordinate with WashDOT and whatnot if we want to do anything with 522. But the study that we're doing on our arterials will be evaluating the speeds, and we're getting close to finishing that, and we're hoping either this fall or in January to come to council with a recommendation on any changes that we might want to make to those arterials. So speed adjustments primarily. So there's that. And secondly, as part of the photo enforcement process that we were supposed to kick off earlier this year, we started looking at school zones, and we did identify Simon's Road as needing a school zone. And so we've already started talks with King County to have school zone sign and flashers installed for that roadway. Again, we're working with King County. There is a shortage of supplies and materials, and it's hard to get things installed, but we made our request to get it in before the school starts. The person who's in charge of it is on vacation, so we weren't able to get an update today as to what the status is of that. But that's something we're trying to do. It usually only takes a couple of weeks when you're dealing with solar power, and that's what we're going to install initially. But we would have to come back later for AC power because of tree canopy makes it a little bit difficult to get good power to the system itself. All of our other schools have school zone signage. We've got 2 locations that don't have flashers. That would be 71st and 202nd. We're going to be looking at transferring those over to flashers starting this year and next year. And so that'll be coming. We're going to try and see if we can incorporate the 202nd flashers into our 68th Avenue Walkways and Waterways project, just for getting it all there with one step. We will have to coordinate with Snohomish County. The other sign is in Snohomish County property, and that's for Kenmore Middle School. So we'll have to coordinate with them to get that one changed and see if they're willing to take care of that. That's kind of the update that I wanted to give you, kind of where we're at on those 2 topics.
All right. Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thanks, Mr. Vincente. Will those signs placed on Simons or by Inglemore then be the school zone signs that say 20 miles per hour, or do they designate a speed limit?
They would say 20 miles per hour, and it would be when lights are flashing.
Right.
Yeah. And those, the place for location for those is going to be at 157th and 151st, roughly in those areas. We can only put signage no greater than 300 feet from a school crosswalk. So we kind of have to be careful where we stick them.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Only bringing it up because you mentioned it earlier, but I did have a chat with some Lake Forest Park City Council members a while back, and there's still interest from them to bring down the speed limit on Bothell Way. So they'd like it to be in line with what Bothell and Seattle have, which is I think 5 miles per hour lower than what we have in Lake Forest Park and Kenmore. So
yeah, exactly. That's why I want to look into it to be consistent with the rest of the corridor.
yeah, and I think LFP is interested. So just flagging that for you.
Thank you.
Councilmember File.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. Mr. John Vicente, I wanted to bring up a couple issues related to signage and vegetation management. Vegetation management is a real issue when it's conflicting with existing signage and blocking signage. And there's quite a bit of overgrowth on our arterials near our schools. So I hope that this is something that can be addressed moving forward. And considering the signage near Ingmore High School, you said there's 300 feet, but from which point? The furthest point with a access there's 2 access points. Will we be going further down or closer up?
So it's 300 feet from either end of school crossings. So in this case, school crossings for Inglemoor High School are 155th and 157th. So it would be 300 feet north of 157th and 300 feet south of 155th. And then there would be a sign up 155th as well too at some point.
Okay. And I know we've talked about this issue before for consideration, flashing crosswalk strips to help illuminate the person as they're walking across. It does help drivers notice a pedestrian in the walkway.
So right now we follow the guidelines of the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD. If there is a situation that doesn't fit well within that, we use our own engineering judgment. But in this particular situation, the MUTCD prohibits the use of flashers at any controlled intersection where you have a signal, a stop sign, or a yield. So in that respect, I would not put any flashers in. The place that you normally would see flashers if you do them would be mid-block crossings.
I didn't hear that last part.
The place you'd normally see in pavement flashers would be at mid-block crossings.
Okay. And there was one recommendation with after a meeting with Ms. Novak. She recommended curb painting in school zones to help make the area more distinct than that of other parts of the city, so that people do notice that they're within a school zone if they're not noticing the signage. And I understand that King County has been rather helpful in the past of helping to paint up to 2 blocks every year or so with extra paint at the end of their annual term. So is this something that we might be able to adopt within our school areas?
The difficulty I have with curb painting is it's not something that's universally understood. There is no designated color. There's no writing that I know of that says that a school zone is identified by a specific color of striping along curb lines. If we were to go out there and stripe, we would probably have to have some sort of educational effort to notify people as to what it's for so they understood it. That would only then cover the folks who look at the information or get the information. At this time, I wouldn't recommend doing any curb painting. Right now, having the flasher, once we get the flashers installed, will add a lot of improvement for folks knowing what they're entering. I don't believe that curb painting would be effective. That would require the drivers to look down, look at the curb and go, what am I seeing here? And not looking at the road in front of them. They're looking down at the side, which I don't think is I wouldn't consider that to be a very safe way of driving along the roadway, looking at the side, trying to figure out where
Okay.
you're.
And so given that's your position on curb painting, is that your same position on school zone stamped on the street? That's very common.
It can be common in certain areas. It's an enhancement treatment. And what we normally do is we do standard treatments for any kind of mitigation or safety equipment or anything that we put in. And if we find that that doesn't work so well, we enhance it. We take it to the next level. For an example, the lowest level for school zones would be a sign. The next level would be a flasher, the flashing lights. The next phase after that would be enforcement, whether that would be photo enforcement or having officers in place. You can do the in-pavement striping. The big problem with that is the maintenance. The way you install them has to be full width of the roadway. And so you're going to wind up having portions of the lettering within the wheel track, which means we would have to do very regular maintenance on those as well too. So that's something that to be considered.
I think that would be helpful and a great way to make the area distinct and help slow people down, kind of a thoughtful approach and innovative that way. The other thing is you're talking about putting in the school zone sign with a reduced speed limit and flashing sign. I want to make sure that the jurisdictional option of having that added sign of when children are present is also part of the signage that's being placed in.
So normally you would, the problem that we have with signage that says when children are present is you run into a bit of an equity issue. How is the officer supposed to know whether someone is violating the signage? When children is present, then you get into the argument of, well, was there a child present? Did they see the child? Was the child too far away, too close? How old should the child be? Is this person actually a child? And so you wind up having the argument of, I did not see the child, or there was no child, and an officer that has to then pay attention to see if a child is present. Having the flashing signs makes it very black and white. Either they're flashing or they're not. And so getting into the idea, I don't like signs that say when children present, because I don't feel that that is something that police officers can easily enforce. And so my recommendation is that we go with signage that says when flashing. Now we can adjust the flashing hours to go whenever we want them to. Whereas when children are present, then people have to start paying attention as to where the child is. And then the officer has to then understand whether or not a child was present at that time. They have to be there to physically see the child and to see whether or not the person is violating it. And so I'm not supportive of a sign that says when children are present because of that.
So we have signs like this present within Kenmore city limits already, near
Yes.
Kenmore Elementary School or Arrowhead, for example.
And those signs are going to be swapped out.
They are.
Yes.
So the state gives each jurisdiction an option. This option to have this secondary sign gives further recourse to be able to cite and ticket someone appropriately. That being said, our middle schools and our high schools are very active areas where students are there after hours, before hours for sports and whatnot. And some of the injuries that have taken place have been particularly in these hours. So I am concerned about that. I do think it matters that we do all we can to reduce impact to our community and risk. And I'm behind this target zero approach 100%. And I certainly don't want to see any more children or youth or teens being hit in crosswalks or near schools, let alone any part of our community. So that being said, I am for this additional signage. It is an option of a jurisdiction to have it. It's an option given by the state within the code. And I don't see a reason to exclude it.
So I definitely agree with you with the target zero. We do not want to do anything that's going to create any harm to the children or other pedestrians on the street. One of the things that we do have to do, though, is we do have to have a proper balance. The more things you put out there, the more distracting it is for drivers, and they're paying attention then to signage and striping, and paying attention to who might be trying to cross the street or who's on the side of the street, or paying attention to the car in front of them or what's going on with vehicles entering the roadway. The term we use, of course, is sign pollution. The more signs you put out there, the more people are trying to read signs and understand what they're saying, and they're not paying attention to their actual driving. So we need to balance what we put out there for the driver safety, but also for pedestrian safety. And I believe that having a sign out there that says when flashing is sufficient for the safety we need at that time. If we need to do further analysis, if we find that a certain intersection needs more signing, or sorry, a certain street more signing, then we will do that. But so far, for what we're seeing right now, the signage that we're proposing is signs that say when flashing.
I really appreciate that. And I would like to make the recommendation that we add the additional signage. We already do have these signs in different parts of our city, near schools. You're saying that we can take them away, and I understand your argument for, but we have a real situation within the city of Kenmore, called out by our governor even, and we can do better by ensuring the safety of our community. And when children are present, is not that difficult for a driver to read and acknowledge that their awareness of their surroundings, which is part of their responsibility as a driver, to be aware of their surroundings and the signage. So that being said, most persons slow down when they do see kids present in an area. You never know when a ball is going to fly out on the street, or a kid's going to be talking on their phone and walking out on the street. These things happen. But needless to say, I think it's important that we stay consistent. I don't think pulling the signs away from one zone area or two zone areas makes sense if we already have the standard in place. It is a higher standard, and I think we need to adopt better standards. So for this purpose, I recommend that we add this additional signage.
Councilmember O'Kane.
I'd like to say that I support the city's approach that was presented. I personally prefer the lights. From my experience, I find when children are present distracting, and I always ask, how do we manage that? So I like the explicit times with the lights flashing, and my experience in Lake Forest Park with stated times, which is similar. I don't think they have a flashing light, but they have stated times. Being very clear about when children are present, especially at the populations or groupings that would be at higher risk, I think is important. So I like the new standard. I'm glad to hear we'll be updating the other signs because it is more crystal clear and manageable from my perspective. I really appreciate your presentation.
All right, any other questions? Deputy Mayor.
So you said that we could control when the lights are on or off. How much coordination, especially at a busy place like the high school or the middle school, where there are after school activities, or there are, sporting events, concerts, that sort of thing. How much coordination will we have with the district when it comes to, turning those on when they're having a big event? Is that something that we can do? Is it realistically?
Realistically, in not knowing everything about the programming of these signals, I don't believe it's realistic to go out there in a moment's notice and adjust them. But one thing that we are going to be doing is having a conversation with the schools and asking them when their general events are. What time do they have, early breakfast? How late do they have their school sessions? Do they have activities at 4? Do they have practice ending at 6? And making adjustments to the timing to reflect that. The complication is schools have something going on at all different hours. And so we have to address each school differently and adjust the timing accordingly. But that's something that we plan on doing.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Vincenti.
Thank you.
And if there's nothing else on the agenda,
I just want to point out, Councilmember Srebnick had a longstanding appointment that
right,
scheduled, and she had to leave a little bit early.
that's fine. All right, if there's no further questions to come before us, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Good
Bye,
night.
everyone.
Good evening.